Hello and welcome to Practical Intuition with Kay. This is the show where we are always working to help you come from your heart and make choices from your heart in all things. And I am Kay. I'm a coach. I'm an artist. I'm an adventurer. I am on a really joyful journey. And today, on part of my journey, I have with me an amazing woman, Dr. Pamela Ellis. She spends her days and her time joyfully helping parents and kids navigate the college experience. And welcome, Pamela. It's so great to see you.
Hey, it is great to see you. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Oh, you're very welcome. I was
Yeah.
thrilled that we were connected and able to do this. This is
Yes,
really,
me
really fun.
too. Me
Yeah.
too.
I wanted to start by reading a little bit of your about page because I think it really
Mhm.
says a lot about what you're about and why you do what you do, and we can see where the conversation goes from there.
Okay, let's
So
hear it.
cool. So this is Dr. Pamela's website is
Mhm.
compasscollegeadvisory.com, and there'll be a link to the show notes in there.
Yeah.
If you want to go and meet her.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Pamela writes, I founded Compass College Advisory based on the research of my doctoral program at Stanford combined with my mom's intuition. There isn't anything else I would be doing. It's truly my calling. We partner with parents to help their teens find a college that feels like home without overpaying. Our expertise and insight are backed up by over 15 years of experience working with thousands of students, visiting over 500 colleges around the world, and earning my PhD in education from Stanford University. And I mean, I feel like that is such a joyful beginning of a journey.
Mhm.
And I would love, well, I'd love to start. I mean, I think we'll get there, right? Like I have so many questions
Yes.
about but let's go. If we could go back, I'd really love to hear about you know, how you became who you are, I guess. Like,
Oh
what
my
was your,
goodness.
yeah, like
Oh my
anything you
goodness.
want
That's
to share
really
about.
going back, Kay. Um, Gosh, I'd have to start with my parents because so much of who I am as a mom and also as a person is informed by their lived experiences and having them as parents. And both of them were older when
Mhm.
they, conceived me. And my mom was a sharecropper. And so for her, she learned everything through reading the dictionary, and she ended school at eighth grade and my dad at 10th. And so for me growing up, it was just a different kind of experience having parents who are older and, being mistaken to be, my mom's granddaughter as opposed
Mm,
to her child because of the age difference. And I'm the youngest of nine. And so with that being said, my upbringing was a little bit different in that regard. And I always had people, you know, looking out for me,
mm,
looking out for me in a lot of ways. And so that was, really what I think inspired me and really formed who I am today. And
wow.
so my mom, just really took a lot of care in terms of just the time that she spent with me. And she
Mm,
worked from home mostly. And so just, having that experience. And I myself now have been working from home for over 25 years. And
wow.
so yeah, and I always saw that as an opportunity to have flexibility and to be able to still be there when my kids got home from school. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's that's kind of me in terms of how it all started.
Well, I mean, so much comes up. First of all, just the joy
Mhm.
in your voice. I mean, I
Yeah.
like to have eight siblings.
Yeah.
And it's just it sounds like when you think about
Mhm.
your childhood, it like it sounds like it was quite a lot of fun.
In some ways, yes. The other part of that is I did grow up in a project,
Mm-hmm.
and that comes with some challenges for sure. And being, low income and in a school that didn't really value me in the same
Mm,
way, and also in a segregated um,
mm,
upbringing, because I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, and back then it was pretty segregated. I think it's segregated now, because when I go there, I really don't interact with anyone who doesn't look like me. And
wow.
everything that I do there is segregated. And
Wow.
so, and that's, I'm well into my 50s now. But when I go back home, it's a different experience for me. And it's pretty much like it was when I grew up in many ways.
Well, I mean, first of all, thank you for sharing. Like that,
Hmm.
that is somebody's lived experience.
Yeah.
I think it's really I love hearing about, something like that,
Hmm.
because it really does get directly to the roots of who you are.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and you're not glossing over anything.
No,
Like,
I'm not.
right? I think that's really special and really important.
Mhm.
And I think it's interesting too. Uh, you know, I grew up in a town that was, I think, 98% of folks who looked like me, right?
Yeah.
And I think I'm still on this learning journey. And I think one of the things
Hmm.
that's come up for me is the understanding that, like, folks who look different than me have an experience that I cannot understand
Yeah,
without asking questions, right?
exactly. Exactly.
And it's really, really important to do that, and
Uh,
to hear. And what comes back to me always is
mhm.
um the joy of connecting with somebody's heart, and
Yeah.
an admiration for what
Mhm.
you grew through to get here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And when I talk about, my college, experience, I'm not only a first generation college student, but I'm a first generation high school graduate,
Yeah.
and so that's just a different experience, and different experience to take into college, and having the mindset, having the wherewithal to complete. And so I have to share this funny story with you, Kay. When I got ready to go to college, I applied to all these colleges because I really was worried that I wouldn't get in
Mm.
anywhere. And so I applied to about 16, 17 different colleges, pretty much chose them based on, what I read in the library in these different guidebooks. And when I, got ready to go, my mom was like, "Whew, where did these come from?" "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" And it was like, we don't know anything about these schools. We never heard
Mm,
of them. Why can't you just stay here, stay home and go to school in Memphis?
mm,
And I was just like, I don't want to do that. I just don't want to do that. And when we went, I mean, we took a Greyhound bus, all the way out to California. And my mom, she was like, she went ahead and, let me go away. And people, were just like, where are you going? What is that? Where is
mm.
that place? And some people were like, is that in Connecticut? What I tell them, I was just like, no, it's not in Connecticut. And then when I got there, she gives me $70 for the whole year. And I thought, oh, this is good money,
Yeah.
$70. That was the last of her money. Because
Wow.
her salary then was around $100 to $150 a week. And so I was just like, this is great, because I knew, how much that was for her to give it to
Mm,
me. And I get to the bookstore the next day. My books are $350 for the first quarter. I mean, I had no idea of what I was getting into.
yeah.
And it was just, I mean, she didn't realize where I had gone until she got back home. And when she got back home, she was talking with her physician and shared with him that she had taken me off to college to drop me off. And he was like, she goes, where? That's a really good school.
Right?
And yeah, she calls me. She says, like, baby, my doctor said you're at a good school. I was like,
Uh,
yeah, I think so too. It is pretty good. So,
so I mean, again, I thank you for telling us that. There's a couple of questions I have.
mhm,
And I'm going to try to hold one while I'm asking about the other,
yeah.
because I think a lot of what you're speaking to is the kinds of
Mhm.
the conditioning that we live in, like the
Yeah.
environment that we grow up in, where people are
Yeah.
trying to protect us. People are trying to,
Mhm.
you know, keep us safe. And
Yeah.
I mean, without an understanding of sometimes without an understanding of like what the damage that can do to someone if they're
Yeah.
quote kept safe, but they're not exploring, right? They're not out in the world exploring. And
Yeah, and something, the thing about it is, my experience, that was, like almost 40 years ago, but still today, when I'm working with parents, they still have that mindset of protecting their
mm,
child, and
mm,
they don't want them to go too far away from home. And I've seen that especially a lot in the last few years, given what we've gone through. That's understandable.
mm,
But yeah, I still see that a lot in terms of wanting to protect, and protect in a way that it can get in the way of kids being able to explore, being able to learn those skills of independence and self-advocacy.
mm,
I was even talking with a mom just recently, and she was um, she was talking about, well, I mentioned to her that I think her son should attend a summer program. And attending a summer program will give him an opportunity to really start to develop friendships, learn those social interactions, as well as become more independent,
mm,
especially as he's thinking about going away to college. And immediately she reverted to saying, oh, he can go to a summer program, right here, close by. And that's not what I was thinking at all, because
mm,
there's so many great programs out there. And it's just like, okay. And it just told me something about her, and definitely gave me pause, because
mm,
we aren't working together yet. And I really do have a practice of following my heart when it comes to clients that we serve. And I don't feel that uh, every client is a good client for
mm,
us, and all money ain't good money. And so when there are pauses like that, it says something to me. And I
mm,
feel like I've been doing this work long enough that I can listen to my heart on those decisions, and not make decisions just based on money, based on payroll. It's
yeah.
like, what's going to be good for our team overall. And we've had, in some cases, to just tell parents, no, we cannot work together. We're not a fit to work together.
Mm,
And that's been hard decisions, but still ones that I felt good about. And so when I see that hesitancy in parents with, letting their teen go, I pause and think about, is this a good fit for our organization? Because we are about helping kids explore, find out who they are, and also owning the process, which is so important.
Mm.
And so
So
yeah.
the sort of parent who will firmly keep a child right next to them for whatever reason, right?
Mhm.
And doesn't give their teen, their young adult, the opportunity to have an exploration about who they are or what they think. That those are the sorts of folks who don't resonate with you.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And there could be some reasons. I mean, I've had some students who, may want to stay close to home for particular reasons, but they still are open to exploring. So they may look at a college that's outside of a 5-hour drive. And it's about still helping them to have options, because, teens change their mind all the
Yeah.
time.
Yep. Yep. Two.
And by the time they're a senior in the spring, I just want them to have options and not feel like, man, I wish I had.
Mm,
Because that is such a bad feeling
yeah. Well, and so
when you have that feeling of regret.
yeah, I mean, I've loved my life, right?
Hmm.
When I was 18, I enrolled in university as a
Yeah.
fine art major. And
Hmm.
in my second semester, I was told,
Yeah.
you are not an artist. You should give this up. So I
Really?
did, by my figure drawing teacher. Yes. Yeah. And I've really come to realize that that's much
Oh,
more about where he was than about where I
right.
am or was.
Yeah.
But again, as I say, I've loved my life.
Hmm.
I found my people in human development and child
Yeah.
development, and
Hmm.
the journey that I've been on is amazing. When I turned 50 a couple of years ago, I
Hmm.
remember having this thought of like, but who gets to say if I'm an artist really?
Yeah, exactly.
And um, I think a lot of time, well, I don't know if you agree, but I support parents. It's funny because we're almost on two
Hmm.
sides of a door here.
Yeah.
So I hear from parents who are terrified to let their kids. I remember because
Yeah.
I support parents whose kids are about the same age as the kids who are
Hmm.
looking at colleges, right?
Yeah.
And like what comes up a lot is like, but they how will they ever leave the house? Like,
Exactly.
and at
Yeah.
the same time, the parents, and the reason
Hmm.
I think the reason I connected that with my own journey was because
Hmm.
I I think up until just a few years ago, I was a parent who was like, "Oh, no, 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 like I'm afraid
Yeah.
for you to go out into the world. Like I
Yeah.
don't want this for you." And to be able to look at that and understand like, well, we're all on our journeys and it's really
Yeah.
okay. And I remember working with a mom,
Mhm.
last year whose child was basically wanting to go to New York City to go meet a friend in New York City, a friend that they'd met
Mm.
online that they didn't
Yeah.
know. And I mean at
Oh.
that I think he was 17 or 18, something like that.
Mhm.
And the mom was like, I want this for him. And at the same time, like he doesn't know how to do any of it. He doesn't know how to get
Yeah.
a train ticket. He doesn't know what
Yeah.
stations there are. He doesn't know anything. And he's going to meet someone that like
Yeah.
I've never met and all the things that came up just in that one
Mhm.
little incident. And we got to talking about like, you know, wouldn't it be amazing to
Mhm.
celebrate them for figuring it out? And oh boy, that felt
Yes.
like a big cliff to jump off for them. But what happened
Yeah.
was they did that
Mhm.
and they stopped. They the mechanism was to put down the worry and say like, actually, like I'm here if you've got questions, but I think
Yeah.
I think that you get to choose for yourself and
Yeah.
talking with her after that experience where
Mhm.
her child had gone and done this wonderful thing and felt so incredibly confident in themselves
Yeah.
and then we as parents can start looking back at like our own what's actually in
Yes.
here, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I had one of those moments with my daughter. She's into farming, and she does woofing. I don't know if you ever heard of woofing. It's the World Organization of Farming.
No, what a
And
cool name.
basically, she traveled down south. I don't know how she got there, if it was a train or bus or what. I don't think she bought a flight there. And it was living on someone's farm and then working the farm to pay for room and board.
Wow.
And she did that for 3 weeks. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. When she mentioned it to me, I'm thinking like, who does that? Because I'm definitely not one
That's
to
not
go
your
stay on
jam.
a farm. I do not want to do that. And I wake up early. And the thing about it is, my daughter, it is so hard to wake her up in the mornings.
Mm-hmm.
And if I say we're going to be leaving to drive somewhere at 7, we'll usually end up going around 8. But the thought of her getting up early, working a farm, milking cows, doing whatever, I just wouldn't have ever believed it.
Yeah. 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 And
Because
did she
that's
do
not
it?
the girl that I recall who is so hard to wake up in the mornings and sometimes keeps a very messy room. She did it. She did
She
it.
did it.
Yeah, she did it. But I was really, really nervous about it.
Wow.
And in hindsight, I was thinking like, I need to tell her not to do this, but I didn't say anything because I do want her to grow in her confidence and feel, like she is independent and can do things.
Yeah.
'Cause I see it so much with the parents that I work with, and they don't know they're teaching me
Yeah.
when they're doing things. And so I let her go and she did it. She
Oh,
did it.
wow. I mean, that is
Yeah.
so I think this is a celebration not just of her for doing it,
Hmm.
right? And conceiving of it and really reaching for something that she
Yeah.
really wanted. It's a celebration of you too, because
Letting go.
yeah, right? Like you set aside whatever was going on in your mind and saw her heart and said, okay, you get to follow your heart, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. As crazy as it sounds.
Yeah, yeah. And I think so I've got one of my sons is it's been really interesting on
Uh-huh.
there to watch them on their journey. So the older one was a
Uh-huh.
community college student before
Hmm.
COVID. And it was and he
Yeah.
loved it. He was in the student government. He just the whole
Mm.
going to
Yeah.
college was like his whole being was like, this is amazing. And then COVID happened and
Oh.
he was like, nope, I'm not doing this.
Oh.
And
Yeah.
so he started looking around, and what he landed on was the one sort of education that he felt
Uh-huh.
interested in because it had to be done in person was
Yeah.
emergency medicine. So he
Mm.
became an EMT. He has spent the
Mhm.
last couple of years now working in that
Yeah.
capacity in an ambulance in an
Mhm.
emergency room, um and now he's uh
Wow.
he's getting a paramedic certification. So he's spending the next couple of
Mm.
years like
Yeah.
really invested in becoming a paramedic. And it's so funny because sometimes people are like, well, you shouldn't do that. Like, there's not a lot of
Mhm.
money in that. You could make so much more money if you were a
Yeah.
doctor, if you were a nurse, if you were
Yeah.
doing some one of these other things. And he's like, but that's not what I want. Like, what I want is this. It's
Yeah.
incredible, this feeling and
Yeah.
this, and then the other. So celebrating him
Mhm.
and also myself for not being like, is that really like to sort
I
of
know.
to really be able to look at him and say, this is what he wants.
Yeah.
And the other one, the younger one is he is going to community college, and
Mhm.
he reached for and got a
Mhm.
sound engineering internship in
Wow.
a little bit away from where we live, just into the city.
Uh-huh.
So um and like what was really interesting for
Mhm.
me, if I could be objective, when I
Yeah.
was objective, was to watch him share that he wanted it, talk about how
Yeah.
the incredible people who do this,
Mhm.
and sort of at some point kind of look down and go like, maybe I could do that. Like, there's an
Yeah.
internship that maybe I could do. And then to watch him,
Yeah.
and actually I was away. I was so uh for folks who this is your first time
Mhm.
listening, I crossed England on foot in May,
Mhm.
which was, you know, it was a real journey of my own of
Yeah.
discovery. And
Mhm.
um while I was there, so in other words, while I was not here being mom, that was when he
Mhm.
applied. And he shared that
Wow.
he applied while I was there, and I was like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
You go, man. And um, you know, I think, well, actually, you know what I really would love to do, Dr. Pamela,
Yeah.
is kind of return to that moment when you were standing in the bookstore discovering that you were, a couple $100s short of the money that you, well, and first of all,
Oh.
I think it's really important. I wanted to say this too.
Hmm.
How amazing, like whatever nerves your mom had about you going off to this
Uh-huh.
place and being so far away, she did everything she could, it sounds like, to make
Oh
that
yeah.
happen for you, right? That is
Yeah.
so great. What a gift.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely a testament to her. Um, you know, when I was in that bookstore and that bill came to 350, all I could do is say, I'll be back.
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
Yeah.
Just hold these here. I'll be back. And I actually went back to my dorm and asked a couple of students that I had just met if they would give me the money for my books and that I would pay them back by the end of the quarter, is what
Mhm.
I told them. And these two guys that gave me the money, I'm still friends with them to
Mhm.
this day. And when they gave me the money, I knew that I had to pay them back because I said I would at the end of the quarter. And so I went and found a job.
Mm.
And I worked, Kay, about 20 to 30 hours a week all the way through undergraduate. And in the summers, I would work up to 100 hours a week
Wow.
because I wanted to be sure that I graduated in 4 years
Mhm.
because that's the bumper sticker that my mom had for 4 years. And that I didn't want to have to call her to ask her for the little bit of money
Mm.
that she made. And I know that um, it would really worry and scare her to
Mm.
know that I was all the way out there and didn't have any money. And
Wow.
so that's what I did. And it worked out. I didn't go to any football games on Saturdays, is what it meant. And I went to that first football game during orientation. And after that, the next Saturday that I had off was when my mom came for graduation four
Wow.
years later. And so that was my, college life. And I did get a chance to get involved in a lot of activities as well. But the first thing for me was working
Mhm.
because I knew that I needed the money. And when I finished, I graduated with $10,000 in loans. That was all I had.
Mm.
And everything else was paid for through working and grants um, that I could muster. Everyone in financial aid office knew me because I was always there negotiating something,
Yeah. Yeah.
negotiating something because I didn't want anything to end up going to my home um, and, scaring my mom and
Yeah.
having her worried. And so flights back home, I, would buy my own tickets. And so, yeah, that's
Wow.
how it worked out.
It speaks to such dedication and drive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm curious if, I mean, I know from my own
Mhm.
journey that sometimes
Mhm.
the hardest things are also the most motivating and most exciting things. And
That's true.
I guess I have a curiosity if, like, as you were on your education journey, like,
Hmm.
I don't know, I guess what was the feeling inside? Like, what was the feeling inside yourself, if that makes any sense?
When I was in college,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
yeah, I guess, yeah. I'll leave it there.
Hmm. I mean, I don't know if I remember exactly, but I can only, you know, imagine it based on how I feel today when I'm in that situation. And the experience of being in college for me was one of excitement. It was one of fulfillment. I
Mm,
love learning. I love learning. And with the different things I was involved in, I was helping people. I
mm,
tutored kids and I did research with my professors. Those things gave me energy, they gave me joy.
mm,
And I have found that in what I do now. And if there are things that drain my energy or don't give me joy, I don't do them,
mm,
you know? And so from having that experience earlier on to today, that's the feeling that I had, the excitement about being in a place where I'm learning. I'm learning every day. And when I've been in situations where they're not good situations. Like I worked in corporate for a while and I thought that was pretty miserable.
mm.
And I dealt with it while I was there. I made the most of it and I left
Wow.
because I knew that was just not going to be the best situation for me long term. And with the work that I do now, it's joyous for me. And I just think about, wow, I talk with parents and kids every day about education in some regard.
Yeah.
And just with, when kids come to a meeting with me and they have questions and they want to, and they see me almost, they see me as their coach, and advisor and talking about, what they want to do and talking about their dreams, talking about activities they're involved in.
Mm.
It's all exciting to me. And it's just like, wow, I get to talk with parents and kids every day.
Yeah.
And I did some of that when I worked in corporate, but it wasn't what I did all day, every day.
Yeah.
And so that's the part of corporate for me that was kind of miserable because at the same time, I needed to, put in FaceTime. I needed to show up and
Yeah.
do certain things that I just did not want to do.
Yeah. There's a part in the movie Parenthood where Steve
Mhm.
Martin says something about how he's got to go off and dazzle Dan because like that's his boss and he's got to
Boss, yeah.
yeah, and it's like it just it speaks
Yeah.
exactly what you're talking. So just staying here for a moment because
Hmm.
it's real. I mean, hmm, I think what's coming up for me is how the deep connection between how you felt as a young adult off on your
Hmm.
adventure. There was no way you were not going to do this. And
Right.
even though there were hardships, even though there were challenges, I mean,
Hmm.
I like relating it to my journey.
Hmm.
Um, what comes up to me when you say like I don't do things that exhaust me or drain my energy. And
Yeah.
like, so consequently, what you're doing
Hmm.
energizes you, motivates you,
Yeah.
excites you. You feel wholeheartedly sort of like
Hmm.
uh, in this. And as a
Yeah.
college student, it sounds like you felt that, you know, as the kid on the journey.
Hmm.
And the excitement for you sounds like you get to shepherd families as they're
Yeah.
allowing, encouraging, enjoying, celebrating their young people who are heading out into the world to do what you
Yeah.
got to do too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm very intentional about that in terms of avoiding those things that drain me, take away my joy.
Mm,
I feel like life is too short to give it any attention, any of my
mhm.
attention and time. So if it's not not good, not something that brings me joy,
And
I don't do
so I'm like I have a curiosity about when an obstacle comes up.
it. Hmm.
Um it feels like when you're in that energy,
Mm-hmm.
you are darn well going to find a way around that obstacle.
Yeah.
You don't look at it and go, "Oh, I'll stay over here."
I don't. I don't. And that's definitely a mindset thing uh, that has been with me uh, since, my early upbringing.
Mm,
And I think that probably comes in part, from my parents and seeing, how they made it through a lot of obstacles.
mm,
And I mean, my mom just still kept going. And sometimes, there was a bit of negativity or doubt, but still she kept going.
mhm.
And so I have to admire that aspect. And when there are times when I start to sense any negativity, uh, I'm I'm real sensitive to it because I know it could take me into just a very dark space where I don't want to be. And so there are things that I'll do in my own environment to prevent that. And it could be some of the smallest things that we don't even take notice of, Kay. That's just like yesterday, I went into the bathroom and there was this soap um, bottle. It's the Dial foaming soap.
Mm,
And it was almost empty. And I thought the fact that I am, trying to pump out this very last bit of soap, that's a mindset of scarcity.
mm,
And that's going to influence everything else about my day to day and
mm,
make me feel drained, make me feel like I don't have.
mm.
And I immediately went to the store and got a new bottle and threw that away to say that I want to have my space feel more abundant
Yeah,
and not have that lack, scarcity energy in
yeah,
my space. And that's especially true when I'm in seasons of business development. So I have discovery calls for prospective families. And like, the mom I was talking about earlier, if I'm in a scarcity, drained energy mindset, that means that even if that client isn't a good fit, I'm going to say yes to them because I want the money.
mm,
And
mm.
it's like, no, if my environment tells me that there are a lot of great families out there that we're going to work with and tells me that I'm in a state of abundance as opposed to lack and scarcity,
Mm.
then I can make decisions that benefit my entire team, knowing that we can work with great families and we could still get, meet payroll,
Yeah, yeah,
every period. So that's, what I mean in terms of really being intentional around, what drains me, what takes my energy away, because that can feed into everything else
mm,
in terms of what I'm doing and what I'm trying to achieve and just the overall culture and health of my team.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's first of all, I just think that's awesome. Like, and I love both of those examples of abundance, and scarcity, those different mindsets.
Mm-hmm.
It's so intentional. And it is, and I'm sure you feel like this too, right? When you
Mm-hmm.
come across someone who is not a fit and you can
Yeah.
say, from my heart, I wish you so very well. And there's somebody out
Mm-hmm.
there who's going to be great for you, and it's not me.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. What I do is I refer them to my association. I give them the link
mm,
and, you know, ask them to, definitely look at their directory to see all of the other great consultants that are out there that
that's
could be a
awesome.
good fit for them. Yeah.
Yeah, and then like there's such a positivity mindset there. And I think when I think about the things that can derail people,
Yeah.
um, it comes in a lot of different, you know, flavors, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, but it gets back essentially to to what you were just speaking about, which is it sounds like,
Mhm.
I don't know if you see it this way. The way that I
Yeah.
see this sometimes is
Mhm.
I am not my thoughts. I can see my thoughts
Yeah.
just like I can see my
Yeah.
hand or my hair or something like that, right? And
Mhm.
being able to see them when
Yeah.
something negative is coming up. And this is, I mean,
Mhm.
this is a lot of what
Yeah.
I work with folks on too, is like, let's recognize
Mhm.
it, let it
Yeah.
dissipate, let it flow through.
Mhm.
Because if we try to
Yeah.
stuff it down, that's not good either. That's like, well, I guess I'd better,
Right.
if we're not looking at it, if you know, like to
Mhm.
your for your example of like, well, I'm just gonna suffer through this almost finished thing of soap because, you know, just because or whatever. And like,
Yeah.
being able to recognize that is so great, and then walking away from it because there's
Yeah.
so much that's beautiful in the world.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. There is.
yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
uh
I like
I
having just that moment of just silence.
yeah, right, just like, wow,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's so much that's beautiful in the world.
Mhm. Yeah.
I mean, I even think about, it comes down to something as basic as we are together in Zoom, right?
Yeah.
You and I were
Mhm.
recording this together. We live in completely different parts of the country.
Yeah.
Um, you hear a lot about something called Zoom fatigue, which is people not, apparently, this has not happened in my world at all, but
Yes.
apparently there are folks who who and I guess I recognize this
Mhm.
for myself sometimes too,
Yeah.
where I I don't, but it isn't about not wanting to be on Zoom. It's about
Mhm.
wanting needing the solitude, needing the kind of like
Yeah.
recharging.
Mhm.
Um, but there's this thing called Zoom fatigue, right? And
Yeah.
I was talking, another aspect of this
Mhm. Mhm.
sort of world that we live in today, this
Uh-huh.
sort of modern world. I was speaking
Yeah.
with a friend yesterday who happens to live in New Zealand. We've never met in person.
Mhm. Yeah.
And she said that someone in her life had said, so you know, she's not a real friend if you've never met her in person, they said about me.
Oh.
And I was like, that's, I mean, and what my friend said back was like, of course they're a real friend.
Oh.
Like, why?
Yeah.
And I think it comes back to people trying to protect, people trying to, you know, but maybe this is
Mhm.
where I'm kind of hoping the conversation can go, is
Um,
or interested in taking it, is like,
mhm.
when, I guess, is it safe to say that,
Mhm.
well, no, I won't say it that way. I think it has to do with expanding our comfort zones to
Yeah.
the point where we feel like we can do some things that we didn't realize we could do, right? You
Mhm.
went all the way across the country and
Yeah.
handled whatever came your way, right? Um and when we do that,
Mhm. Yeah.
there are folks in our lives who maybe, like, we make them uncomfortable with our comfort
Yes.
zone experience. I
Yes,
see
you
that
do.
look on your face. And
Yeah.
like, I wonder if that comes into your work, your life, like how does that
Mhm.
land for you?
It definitely does in terms of some people feeling like, oh, she's just doing too much,
Mm,
or feeling intimidated by my boldness
mm,
or accomplishments. I definitely deal with it. And when I have any sense that that's true, I will distance
mm,
because thinking about it too much or being in their space where they can say, you know, a snide remark will drain my energy and it'll make me question. And because I'm an entrepreneur, and as they say, you know, you eat what you kill as
yeah.
an entrepreneur, I really have to be mindful of that. And so that whole intentionality around staying away from those things that drain my energy, sometimes it could be people.
Mm,
When I discern that they're really not happy for me,
mm,
or they feel intimidated by me in any way.
mm,
And so I will gravitate towards spending more time with people who are supportive
mm,
and distance myself from them. And so over the years, there's been relationships that have um, been curtailed because it wasn't healthy,
mhm,
and it felt like they were draining me more than giving me
mhm,
energy.
mhm, mhm. And um, I mean, so often it
Mhm.
happens in our sort of work relationships, our personal
Yeah,
relationships, because what's happening is people want us to stay in the role that they
they see
have
us in.
chosen for
Yeah,
us.
that's true.
I have a colleague
Mhm.
named Andrew Moss. He coached me as I was training to
Uh-huh.
cross England as well, and um he is currently circumnavigating the globe in a
Mm,
sailing race.
really?
Yeah,
Wow.
he's taking the whole year. He's
Hmm.
got a year-long sabbatical. And he like it was this has been a lifelong dream of his. He's always
Hmm.
wanted to do it. And I mean, like he's actually been on this show in this space talking about how
Hmm.
like people will make these assumptions about how, well, you must have pots of money, for example, or you must, there
Exactly.
must be
Take a
some
year
reason
off.
why you're able to do that. And he's like, nope, I just didn't want. I mean, he hasn't said it in this way, but my sense is that
Hmm.
he would say, he would agree with this saying, I didn't want money to stop me from doing this thing that I've always, always, always wanted to do. Anyway, I bring him up because he was in a conversation with another colleague, and
Hmm.
it was about there's this wonderful idea of like sharing your dream and sharing your obstacle together,
Mm.
the obstacle that you feel to that
Uh-huh.
dream, like, and just
Yeah.
seeing what the universe does. A wonderful woman
Hmm.
named Barbara Shear, who's given a TED talk on this. She's written several
Yeah.
books about this kind of
Hmm.
idea of like you just never
Yeah.
know what the universe is going to bring you. So Andrew happens to be in a conversation with
Hmm.
several people, and one of the other people explains that
Yeah.
their dream was to sail around the world,
Hmm.
and that their obstacle was, I don't even know where to begin. How do you
Oh.
find people who could sail around the world? Like, who does that? I have no idea. It's just something that's in my heart that I want to do. And our colleague was
Uh-huh.
like, well, let me direct you to this fellow person in this meeting who's actually going to do this. Like, and so Andrew says,
Uh-huh.
like, I'm really happy to talk with you. Here's my email or whatever. And now the person who had expressed this dream and this obstacle,
Hmm.
that knocked them really out of their comfort zone, because they had always been
Yeah.
telling themselves, well, I really want to do this, but there's no way, right? And here is a
Right.
way, and or at least a way forward, at least a way to find out more about it.
Uh-huh.
So they backtracked a little bit even from that. Like, it's just so
Right.
expanding your comfort zone it's really interesting what you
Yeah.
bump into.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. And when I read this book a few years ago, actually top of 2019, called Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins.
Ooh, can't hurt
And
me.
when I read that book, Kay, I was like, you know something? I'm gonna run a marathon. I had never run a marathon before. It's something I had kind of thought about, but I was always the chubby kid who didn't get chosen for any team.
Mm,
And I really didn't like running or do any running. I tried it out in New York City. I joined this running club in Central Park, and I thought this was fun. And so I can do it like, a 5K or something. But when I read that book, I was like, wow, I'm going to run a marathon. And that was so far out of my comfort zone, even from a training standpoint and all of that. And so what I did, I didn't tell anybody this, first off. I didn't tell anybody that this is what I'm,
This is
dreaming
what's
about,
brewing.
So
Yeah.
unlike your friend there, in Andrew's situation, I wouldn't have articulated this at all. So what I did was I joined an organization. I joined Team in Training so that I could get the training. And it wasn't until I told my kids about it, because they had also read the book, and we had talked about it, and I told them how I was inspired by it. And so I did mention it to them, but I joined Team in Training as a way to get support to do it. And it
Mm,
really wasn't until about 2 months before my race day that I actually publicly
mm,
announced it, because I was really nervous that I just don't know if this is really going to happen, because it's a hard thing to do and it's not something I ever done before.
mm, mm.
So like, in his situation with saying he wants to circumnavigate the world sailing, it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to actually start moving towards it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just find that I need to have support really to do that, and surround myself with people who are going to keep me accountable.
Mm,
Because if I hadn't joined that organization, I don't know if I would have done it, because it
mm.
would have been so easy to just say no, because I haven't done it before.
Yeah. Yeah.
What makes me think I could really do it?
Yeah. Yeah. And being with people who lift you up and support you
Yeah,
and uh, totally get it that this thing that you
yeah,
really want to do, is a great thing to do.
yeah,
Sometimes it's
yeah,
hard for the people closest to us who do love us, of course, and they,
yeah.
and at the same time they're like, I mean, I over the years of my life, I've heard things
Hmm.
like, is this really like why now, for example? Is
Yeah,
this really a thing
yeah,
that you should be doing
yeah.
right now? And mm, it sounds like you're really good at uh recognizing those sort of voices and saying, well, like, let me see if there's anybody out in the world who's also interested in this and also kind of wanting to do this.
Yeah. And something, when you said that, one thing I recalled is I had reconnected with a friend of mine from high school
Hmm.
around that time, 2018, 2019, because I had just finalized a divorce,
Hmm.
and he too had been divorced, and I just wanted to talk with him about it. But when I mentioned it to him that I was going to run a marathon, because he was also a marathoner, he said, "No, you're not." And just him saying that, even if it was jokingly, I was like, okay, I cannot talk with him.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
rest of the time I'm training, it won't be until I finish it.
Mm.
Because that kind of negativity, even if it is jokingly, it's not a joke to me, because I've never done this before. And
Yeah.
it's easy to lapse back into, oh, I can't do it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow. Well, I mean, ooh, I have goosebumps because we are all offered these choices in life, and what we do about it, like, makes the difference, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It makes such a huge difference if
Mm.
and I just want to stay there for a
Yeah.
moment. It's-
Yeah.
wow, that's really deep.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, yeah. And I mean, I've of course talked to him since, and I've done 2 marathons now.
Wow, right?
But
Yeah.
yeah, we've talked since.
Oh, that's awesome. And I think
Yeah.
um I I'm celebrating you. I mean, wow, like it seems like the
Thank you,
the
Kay.
the the way that you operate, the way that your very being is of joyful exploration of finding companions who
Yeah.
support you and who you support. I mean, when you said before that
Yeah.
the folks that loaned you the money to
Hmm.
get your books,
Yeah.
they're still close. You're still close with them today. I mean, that like
Yeah.
these are the sort of bonding experiences that
Mm.
we have, and if we don't ever allow ourselves out of our comfort zone, we don't
Yeah.
have them, you know? So,
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. That's true. One of the things I recommend everyone consider, and that's an accountability partner.
mm,
I first learned about it through a coaching program that I've been part of now for many years. And we would have an accountability partner uh, on a quarterly basis. So you would switch up and have a new person. But right when COVID happened, I was assigned, I was matched up, and I actually asked to be matched with someone that was in my local area. And she and I would talk to each other daily
mm,
at 7 a.m. And it's only maybe a 20-minute call at most. And it's to hold each other accountable. And we pray together as well in that time. And don't you know, it's been 3.5 years now, and we still talk each and every morning. I haven't
wow.
had any other accountability partner since, because it's worked out well. And like your friend in New Zealand, we do not see each other in person, even though we live in the same city. I think I've maybe seen her maybe twice,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
person, but that's it. And she keeps me accountable
Wow.
and prays for me, and I pray for her family. And it's every single weekday. And when I'm out in California, it means that I'm up at 4 a.m. But I really value that. And I think that's made a difference, because then it keeps me grounded in terms of keeping intentionality
Mm,
in the relationships that I build and create, because I always know that I have her
wow.
to talk to.
Yeah,
And when something is awry, she'll say it. And
wow.
so that that really makes a difference. And that's something I wish for everyone to have, is an accountability partner. And it could be, for men, it doesn't have to be only for women. But it's worked really
Mm.
well to have that.
I think for anyone who has, a direction in their heart that they'd
Hmm.
like to go, and to have somebody to support that, like
Hmm.
it doesn't matter,
Yeah,
whether you're what gender you are, like, or anything else, except that
absolutely.
you have
Yeah.
this commitment, and you really
Hmm.
want to do this, and I think that's
Yeah.
lovely because you're showing up for each other,
Right.
too.
We
So.
are. We are showing up for each other.
Well, these go so quickly. Our time is
They
really
do.
short.
And we've talked about a whole bunch of things. So I'm just like, where did the time go?
I
And I
know.
appreciate that it was conversational,
Mm,
just conversational. And there were moments of quiet, which I appreciate, just to absorb and to think about what you were sharing and what I said. And I feel like it was just a great conversation
mm,
with a lot of mutual respect,
yeah.
and I appreciated it.
Oh, well, I'm really, really glad. I'm glad to hear
Yeah.
all of that. As soon as we connected, I was like,
Hmm.
oh yes, this is a person
Yeah.
who's really cool, and I would like to, speak with more. So I'm
Yeah.
glad we've had this opportunity. Is there anything
Yeah.
as we're wrapping up that you want to go out on? Is there anything that, that's coming up for you that you'd like to share?
Oh, I have a local event in Columbus, Ohio, and I don't know if you have very many listeners there, which is a mother-daughter brunch.
Oh, wow.
And one of the things that I will share for everyone who's out there that has a teen daughter is to celebrate her
Mm,
and find those ways that you can make memories with her while she's still, there at home before she goes away after finishing high school. And that will go such a long way in terms of her confidence
mm,
and journey into womanhood. So that's
that's
what I would
amazing.
leave with. I know
Yeah.
maybe that's not marketing savvy to leave with just a general statement. I don't have any call to action. So
Right. Well, and
yeah.
I think that is such a great point because
Uh-huh.
in my I actually have this written down. A coach that I used to
Yeah.
follow or and I in
Uh-huh.
fact took an intensive of his. He says, "Take risks, but when you do the opposite of what the majority is doing,
Hmm.
it is almost never a risk." And I have learned
Yeah.
for myself that I find quote marketing and promotion incredibly draining and incredibly
Really?
de-energizing. Yeah,
Yeah.
because for me what is very
Uh-huh.
energizing and what feels good and what I'm inspired to share out into the
Yeah.
world are just conversations, just connections, just
Yeah.
joyful, just everything. I mean, the
Hmm.
word just
Yeah.
sometimes. But like
Yeah.
this is this is not the sort of show where we're looking for, taglines or calls to action. This is the sort of
Right.
show where a real heartfelt
Uh-huh.
true, you
Yeah.
know, stories and feelings that's what is going to
Yeah.
motivate folks to listen and
Yeah.
yes, so for any of you listening, if you'd
Hmm.
like to talk a little bit more with Dr. Pamela, if you've got kids of of an age where it's time for thinking about college, it is I've shut off my tablet.
Yeah.
It is compasscollegeadvisory.com.
Yes,
The link is in the show
exactly.
notes and
Yeah.
I highly recommend having a chat with Dr. Pamela because you're
Yeah.
awesome. So,
Thank you, Kay. You are too. And I appreciate you so much in all that you do.
well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
I like to end each show with a huge thank you to our producer.
Mhm.
He is the 26th-time winner of the Husband of the Year award. He is not just our producer, he's also my husband, Benjamin Culp. And he has just come back from a very fun sort of every year now for the last couple of years. He's taken himself on a fishing trip. Like he's given himself permission to just go and ocean fish, staying on Cape Cod and joyfully doing that. And when the first year he did it, he came home and he said, I don't understand how all these things that I hate add up to something that I love. And it's that getting out of your comfort zone, right? It's fishing in the middle of the night because that's when they're biting, and it's walking in sand for miles and miles and I don't know, all the things, but boy, is it he comes home so exhilarated and so full of joy. So, yeah. Thank you, Ben. Thank you so much for all that you do for us, and thank you everyone listening so much for being here. It means a lot that you're here. And so much love for me, Kay, and from Dr. Pamela as well. Cheers.